Before we get into today's edition of Just the Truth, Mike Lindell sent me a note yesterday. He has a special for the 6-piece towel set, $25 when you use promo code Joey. Just go to mypillow.com, use promo code Joey. You'll get the $25 offer on the 6-piece towel set, and I promise you, these will be the most comfortable, the most absorbent towels that you own. mypillow.com, use promo code Joey. Get the 6-piece towel set for just $25. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. A new report from the Heritage Foundation says a violent Venezuelan gang that has committed crimes in multiple states across the U.S. is expanding across the country, quote, like a slow-growing cancer, and will impact Americans for decades. Thank you, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Early voting started in Georgia yesterday, and a record number of votes were cast as residents headed to the polls in a critical battleground state that could decide the presidential race on November the 5th. Meanwhile, a new Georgia election rule to require county election workers to hand count ballots after polls close to ensure accurate machine tabulation is being challenged in court, and a judge is set to hear arguments later today.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
On the text line, Susan from Hartwell writes, I voted for Trump yesterday. Yes, voting started in Georgia yesterday, and a record number of early votes were cast in Georgia yesterday as residents headed to the polls in a critical battleground state that is grappling with the fallout of Hurricane Helene and trying to keep things as normal as possible, while a controversial election administration changes that have spurred a flurry of lawsuits from the Democrats. Roughly 250,000 ballots were cast yesterday. Gabe Sterling of the Georgia Secretary of State's office posted on X saying, spectacular turnout. We are running out of adjectives for this. The previous first day record was 136,000 set in 2020, according to Sterling. That's a pretty big increase from 136,000 to 252,000. That tells you that there's some enthusiasm out there, doesn't it? I hope and I think, based on some of the polls that we've seen in the past few months, that enthusiasm benefits Donald Trump, because I think that Trump supporters are more enthusiastic than Democrats and Harris supporters. We'll see. Georgia, of course, a swing state, one of the most closely watched this election, along with Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, some of the others. Former President Donald Trump trying to reclaim after the horrible loss to President Joe Biden by just a very small margin. Again, if you believe the final count, that's a debate that's behind us now. No reason to go back to that. That of course led Trump to the infamous call to the Secretary of State down there and to the governor, asking to find that 11,000 votes or so that was needed. Those efforts have loomed large this year as new changes to how the state conducts elections have been approved by the Republican members of the state election board, which has led Democrats and others to file suit, to take to the courts, many of which have yet to be resolved, even though Election Day is just 3 weeks away. They're still in the courts. We'll be back in court today. Despite the massive turnout yesterday, the process appeared to go smoother this year for some Atlanta area voters who spoke to the local media. Corrine Canada, for example, said, last time I voted in the city and the lines were out the door. They only had maybe 3 people working. So people honestly just started leaving because it was this is too long. I can't sit here and wait. I have to go back to work. But here, no, it was easy, she said, talking about her experience yesterday. Parts of the state are continuing, of course, to recover from Hurricane Helene. Georgia election officials say that absentee ballots went out by the U.S. Postal Service as scheduled and were not impacted by the storm. So far, they say they've seen just over 250,000 voters request absentee ballots. saying that perhaps in the next week or so, they'll see a rise up to 300,000, and that they think it'll probably look more like 5 to 6% of all voters will be voting absentee this cycle. This according to data from the Secretary of State's office, Brad Raffensperger. He's a Republican, remember? Experts say that some new state laws that tighten rules for absentee ballots and crack down on the availability of drop boxes may make the option less appealing. Now, this has been a big debate in Georgia. For some of you in Georgia, I'd love to get your take on this. You can text me, you can email me, joe@joeyhudson.com, and tell me what you think about drop boxes being available. I think you know how I feel about it. I think it's crazy. And evidently, a lot of Georgia legislators and election officials do too. Some drop boxes will still be available, but primarily in election offices where they can be watched, where they can be monitored, unlike the drop boxes that were available 24/7 in 2020, not being monitored at all. It's also possible that the state could continue to see high numbers of early votes, given that Georgia law now mandates 2 Saturdays and possibly 2 Sundays. That's left up to the county. So there's going to be some weekend voting, which will be very convenient for people. So if you live in Georgia, you can vote now. I'm not sure when the Saturday voting is. Just check with your local election officials. And if weekend voting is going to be more convenient for you, then that's when you need to go. Secretary of State Raffensperger said that safeguards are in place for a safe election, and that in addition to every race being audited, officials will also randomly audit voting equipment and make sure that the voting equipment is working properly, and that the numbers that they are seeing with the number of ballots coincide with what the voting machine actually registers. And that's what the big debate is right now, and that's what the lawsuit is about. The State Election Commission is mandating that poll workers hand count ballots. Now, not the votes, not who they voted for, but that they count the ballots. So in other words, if that machine at the end of the day says that 10,000 people voted, it's real simple. You used to have 10,000 ballots. That's all they're asking them to do, not to tally who they voted for. They just want to make sure that there are not any extra ballots in there. Raffensperger, who of course was in Trump's crosshairs following the 2020 election, after he recertified the results, has led the effort primarily in Georgia. He, along with the governor Kemp, to change a lot of the things that went wrong in 2020. State judges are scrutinizing a number of the new rules passed by a Republican majority on the state election board, claiming that maybe it's a little too late to put these in place. Well, look, they've been on the books for a while now. It's just the Democrats are just now challenging them, just now going to court trying to prevent them. A hearing was held yesterday in a key Georgia county, Fulton County, where a lot of this happened. The Fulton County Superior Court Judge, Robert McBurney, is overseeing the case. It was filed by the Cobb County Board of Elections earlier this month. This is a bipartisan board, supposedly, taking issue with the new rules that would require hand counting of the ballots. The rule also sparked a lawsuit filed by Georgia Democrat officials, which is set for a hearing today as well. Cobb County, of course, is a majority suburban area anchored by the city of Marietta, just outside of Atlanta, a suburb of Atlanta. During yesterday's hearings, attorneys for the election board argued that there were no limitations on when election rules can be passed, and pointed out that the specific hand counting rule applies only to the ballots themselves, just like I was saying, not the actual who they voted for. But McBurney, the judge, noted that it was late in the game, he said, for the election board to change election rules, but also conceded that in a vacuum, wanting to ensure that the number of ballots cast matched the machine count was a laudable goal. Well, it's common sense. I don't know what they're fussing about. I don't know what the big debate's about. Why would you not want to just verify that you had an accurate number of ballots? Why are Democrats so opposed to that, and particularly in Fulton County? It's a rhetorical question. I think we know that. Why, right? We know why they're questioning this. Republican Party officials have held the rule up as a critical guardrail to ensure voters can be confident in their elections. But Democrats contend that that it will seed doubt, that it will make people doubt their system. How could that make people have doubt in the system when it's just another checks and balance to verify that your number of ballots is accurate? Why would you argue against that unless you are trying to figure out how you might cheat and not get caught? An attorney in support of the plaintiffs pointed out to state officials who have come out in opposition to the rules changes, including Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, said all of them are concerned about the impact of this rule. He said it would be one thing in an ideal sterile environment to have people who are fresh and energized sit down and count ballots. That's not how this is going to play out. In reality, as our petition affidavits reference, poll workers go to their polls as early as 5 a.m. And he goes on to talk about this could be a 14, 16-hour day. His argument against it is that they're going to have to work too long. It's going to be too long of a day for a poll worker. Is that an argument to do away with this or to just ignore a brand new law? Once again, the Democrats want to leave the door open for a little hanky-panky. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. This year, I really thought I was going to have to boycott the holidays. I was going to lock myself away and not come out until 2025. But after finding PhD weight loss, you can bet I'll be at every holiday party I'm invited to. That's because PhD weight loss helped me take control with great confidence, support, and my new healthy body. The best part? PhD weight loss did it all without harmful drugs that keep you dependent on them to maintain your weight loss. It's a natural, medication-free approach to weight loss crafted to naturally diminish food-related thoughts, hunger, and cravings, making your weight loss journey more sustainable and enjoyable. Take it from me, I lost 33 pounds. The PhD weight loss program teaches you not just what to eat and when, but also how to think differently about food and finally let go of those cravings and get rid of the hunger naturally. Don't lock yourself away this holiday season. Call PhD Weight Loss today at 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com. Texter, this is Jeff, writes, Brett Baer is not far from being a Democrat himself, so I'll look for a very easy interview. Of course, Jeff is referencing the big interview tonight at 6 o'clock. Vice President Kamala Harris will be sitting down with Fox News' chief political anchor, Brett Baer. They'll be in Pennsylvania for the vice president's first ever interview on the Fox News network. Now, don't worry. You don't have to watch it. I'll watch it so you don't have to. I'll have all the details for you tomorrow. So just plan to listen tomorrow. Kamala Harris's media tour is continuing this week, but she may have stumbled into a buzzsaw that she wasn't expecting. Radio host Charlamagne the God called out Vice President Harris for her, quote, filibuster of a listener's question on reparations. And he pressed her multiple times. He talked about doing a lot of things wrong at the border in a highly anticipated town hall focused on her appeal to black voters. Here's an example.
To your point, yes, I am running to be a president for all Americans. That being said, I do have clear eyes about the disparities that exist and the context in which they exist, meaning history, to your point. So my agenda, well, first of all, on the point of reparations, it has to be studied. There's no question about that. And I've been very clear about that position.
Oh, yeah. She's been very clear about that position. Now, what exactly did she say there? The question was on reparations. It appeared to be a black caller, and Harris, as always, was trying to walk the wire. She wants the caller to think, oh, yeah, I'm interested in what you're asking here. I'm going to look into it. Reparations. We need to study reparations. At the same time, Harris doesn't want the headlines to be Harris is for reparations. She can't afford that this close to the elections. She can't afford to alienate people who may be on the fence, those independents, but maybe aren't in favor of reparations, aren't in favor of just handing a group of people, black citizens in the U.S., a check. So she walked the fine line there, which had Charlamagne the God Now, listen, I don't listen to him. I don't really. I listen to pieces of this interview. I can't honestly say I listened to the whole interview. I'm just not. I mean, he's a very popular radio host. His real name is Leonard McKelvey. I don't know the whole Charlemagne the God. I don't know where that came from. Maybe I should look into that. But Leonard McKelvey is his name. And I will give him credit. He tried repeatedly and with little success to knock her off of her talking points, to get her off of those memorized answers that she so famously delivers. It was an hour-long interview. It was carried on iHeartRadio's website and streamed live on CNN. Harris opened her only announced event of the day during a trip to Detroit, just 21 days, 20 days now, I guess. That was yesterday. Said, I'll try to be on time. Apparently, I'm 40 seconds late. I don't really know. The host joked about her tardiness, saying, well, you are black. I don't know what that means. Before launching into a question about why Harris comes off as very scripted. They say you like to stick to your talking points, he said. I mean, he just came right out and pressed her. She very coolly replied, that would be called discipline. Now, that's a pretty good comeback, actually. Discipline? And then she started to dodge a series of pointed questions from both Charlemagne the God and some callers. He allowed callers and guests to ask questions. She said, there are certain things that must be repeated to ensure that I have everyone know what I stand for and the issues that I think are at stake in this election. And so it requires repetition. No, I think she just admitted yesterday to Charlemagne the God that she has memorized answers and that's what she sticks to, whether it's really the question or not. McKelvey pressed Harris on some pretty tough issues like foreign aid to other countries, which former President Donald Trump has campaigned on restricting, on her past prosecuting marijuana offenders. Maybe a lot of his listeners smoke marijuana. I don't know. And her role as retiring President Biden's point person on reducing illegal immigration, which instead surged. When a listener expressed concern that Trump, who is, of course, promising that he's going to have a mass deportation like we've never seen before, the listener said, might that put anyone that doesn't look white in camps? I guess they're afraid that anybody of color might end up being in camps under a Trump administration. Harris began saying, yeah, you know, you've hit on a really important point and expressed it, I think, so well, which is he is achieving his intended effect to make you scared. He prefers to run on a problem instead of fix a problem, and we got to call it out and see it for what it is, she said. Now, Charlemagne the God jumped in and said, but doesn't the Biden administration have to take some blame for the border, though? A lot of the blame, because, I mean, the first 3 years, y'all did get a lot of things wrong with the border. I mean, he jumped right in there. He did not let her, as many of her Democrat friend hosts, and I don't think she expected it. He did not let her just give some of these cookie cutter answers when he knew they weren't true, when he knew there was more to the story. Of course, when he kind of pressed her on the idea that she had gotten a lot wrong at the border, she pivoted into a lengthy recitation of campaign talking points, saying that, quote, the first thing we dropped was a bill to fix the broken immigration system, referring to legislation that would have provided a pathway to citizenship, of course, for nearly all illegals in the U.S., which Republicans said, wasn't acceptable. That's her solution. Just make them legal. Let them stay. We all know that border encounters have hit record highs in each of the 3 years that Harris has been the border czar. She didn't like to be called that, but that's what she was tapped to be. She has declined in recent months that she was actually the border czar. She was asked by a listener, what's your stance on reparations? And that's what I just played you. She declined to take a firm stance and tried to talk around it. McKelvey asked at one point, you're going to keep going, as she was just rambling on. She said, you caught that. He said, okay, filibuster, ma'am. I mean, he basically called her out and accused her of filibustering, just talking mumbo jumbo rather than answering the question. And we all know that that's what Kamala Harris does best, is mumble and serve up word salads. And boy, did she try it yesterday. Again, kudos to Charlemagne the God. He tried. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Firmin Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Firmin Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Firmin Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Firmin, Matthew Firmin. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Firmin Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Firmin Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Firmin Ford online at firminford.com, firminford.com. One outcome of the influx of illegals that have flooded into our country during the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris administration could be the gift that keeps on giving for generations to come, and not in a good way. This is just another reason to show Kamala Harris the door and get Donald Trump back in the White House so that we can get some control at our borders and actually take action against the criminal element that has taken advantage of the Biden-Harris open borders policy. The Heritage Foundation released a study, and they say that a violent Venezuelan gang that has committed crimes in multiple states across the U.S. is expanding across the country, calling it a slow-growing cancer that's going to impact Americans for decades. The Heritage Foundation published this issue brief on Tren de Aragua and how it's become the latest transnational criminal organization to establish itself in the U.S., a surge that coincided with the historic crisis at the southern border. It wasn't just by chance. This happened because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris has allowed these criminals to come into our country. The brief was written by Simon Hankinson and Aaron Snyderwan. They wrote, during the past few years, hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans have been released or paroled into the United States, allowed to stay in temporary protected status, or just slipped in without being encountered by authorities, known as the gotaways. Blending among them are hundreds of members of Tren de Aragua, which, like all migrant gangs, begins by preying on its own countrymen. The researchers say that this gang began in the Tocaron prison in the Venezuelan state of Aragua and has since expanded into Bolivia, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Mexico, Peru, and now the U.S., thanks to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They say the threat from this gang echoes the Salvadorian MS-13 gang, which arrived in the 1980s and is regularly linked to crimes throughout our country. They wrote, TDA, as it's known, expanded its network by creating alliances with other gangs and moved into areas following the pattern of Venezuelan migration into the U.S. The report quotes former Customs and Border Protection Acting Commissioner Mark Morgan, who oversaw a gang task force in the early 2000s targeting MS-13. His warning is very stark as he blames the rise of this gang on the current administration. He says, although MS-13 remains at the top of the list of the 50-plus different gangs from across the globe attempting to illegally enter our borders, the Biden-Harris administration has intentionally provided the pathway for what could become the MS-13 2.0. He says this is a gang whose propensity for violence and ruthlessness is well documented. This gang is expanding its criminal operations like a slow-growing cancer across our nation and unleashing a preventable wave of crime that will be with us for decades. The study also quotes Venezuela's statistics showing that there's been a 25% drop in violent deaths between 2021 and 2022. It's not implausible to postulate a link to Venezuela's export of thousands of young criminals, many to the U.S. So basically, their crime rate is going down. Ours is going to be going up because of these gang members who have been allowed into our country. I mean, this in itself is criminal in a lot of ways. Criminal on Joe Biden's part and Kamala Harris's part for allowing this to happen, for turning the head, all in the name of, well, you know, we have to welcome these people in. They're persecuted. These are criminals. And that's why when you have a border that works, you check these people out. You don't just open the doors. You don't send them cell phones. You don't send them airline tickets to anywhere they want to land in the U.S. Meanwhile, there have been numerous crimes just in the last year that have been linked to this gang. And it's not just the big cities, not just the big states. Georgia has reported activity. Illinois, Texas, Colorado, and of course, yes, New York. New York probably is the epicenter. Officials have linked the gang to more than 62 robberies in New York City, and suspected gang members were arrested for an assault on cops. A Customs and Border Protection bulletin in March alerted agents to tattoos and other identifiers of the gang. The brother of the suspect of the killing of Georgia student Laken Riley, remember that? Had ties to this very gang. This gang has established a significant presence in parts of Colorado, according to the report, where they've reportedly taken over a number of apartment blocks. And we've seen reports on this, haven't we? Where they have taken over apartment complexes. Now, the Democrats don't like to talk about that, and even the mainstream media pushed back on J.D. Vance when he talked about it over the weekend, trying to say that it was misinformation and saying that, well, it was only a few. Well, look, it shouldn't even be one. A foreign gang members or gang should not be allowed to take over a single bedroom, let alone an entire complex. Fox News reported in July that Trinidad members had been given a green light to fire on or attack law enforcement in Denver. With that growing presence, former President Trump, of course, has promised to tackle the gang if elected next month. On Friday, he detailed Operation Aurora to remove gang members. He came under a lot of criticism for it. But this is what we have to do. It's one thing when you have families who are suffering, who can't feed themselves from the country that they're coming from. They're trying to escape that. It's another when you have these hoodlums, these gang members coming over here to prey on our innocent people. Neither one should be allowed to do this. We can stop it if we want to. This program that Trump is suggesting would invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to target and dismantle every illegal migrant criminal network operating on American soil. I mean, we need to have our armed forces out there fighting these gangs and not just local police officers. On Friday, Trump said, I'm announcing today that upon taking office, we'll have an Operation Aurora at the federal level to expedite the removals of these savage gangs, and I will invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Think of that, 1798. This was put there, 1790. Yeah, that's a long time ago, right? To target and dismantle every migrant criminal network operating on American soil. He added, who would have ever thought that a president or a future president would ever have to stand here and say such things? And he's right. No president should have to say it. And shame on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for allowing it to happen. Meanwhile, the Heritage Foundation report notes that there could be other instances of crimes committed by gang members that have been underreported or unreported in some cases. In some of these larger cities, these left-leaning cities, they don't want the truth to come out. They want to kind of brush it under the rug because they know that Americans don't agree with this. They know how Americans feel about this. So rather than saying, yeah, some of those illegals that we opened up to in our sanctuary city, they're robbing our people. They're raping our women. They're beating our elderly. But no, we're a sanctuary city. We welcome all people. So they don't report it as being these foreign gang members. Wow. The report says it is plausible that they have connections to Trinidad or other violent gangs that are not always evident to U.S. law enforcement even after arrest, saying that the crimes reported could be the tip of the iceberg because of some of the underreporting. This is a huge problem. And again, J.D. Vance pushed back against claims in the media that the gang was limited to just a handful of those apartments, saying, hey, one is too many. I mean, I couldn't believe, who was it? Was it Martha Raddatz who pushed back on him over the weekend, kind of calling him out, kind of like she had a gotcha moment that he had said something that was incorrect, and he pushed right back. I tell you what, the more I see of J.D. Vance, the more I like it, the more I like him, because he doesn't take anything. And when he pushes back, he has the facts ready. He can make the argument, a very convincing argument. And boy, Martha Raddatz didn't know how to respond. In fact, the way she ended it, of course, she's the host, so she has the final say. She kind of said, well, we'll just leave it at that, proclaiming that her argument was the winning argument. and wouldn't let him talk, just moved on. But this is the problem, folks. We knew it was a problem, but as we see some of the stories coming from these cities where these gangs have set up camp, and one of the bigger problems, they're not arresting and holding these people. Why? Now, I'm going to share some examples with you in just a few minutes, because a lot of these are young men who are minors. They're young teens. And so they can't keep them in jail. So what do? They turn them back out on the street. And what do these little thugs do? They go back to robbing and raping and beating the elderly. This is America. We need to stand up and we need to reclaim our country. We need to take back our country. And that means a lot of different things. In this case, it means take it back from the hands of these illegals. Your comments are welcome. Text me, email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. Whether you're replacing a broken appliance or maybe you're just upgrading, you're totally remodeling the kitchen, when it's time to get those new appliances, when you're ready for them, you don't want to have to wait weeks or even months to get started using them, right? Well, that's not the case when you shop with my friends at Discounted Appliance Warehouse. With over 11,000 square feet and 1,500 appliances at any given time, you can buy today and use today quite often. I'm talking about shopping with my friends at Discounted Appliance Warehouse in Pickens. It's worth the short drive over to Pickens. Jeff, Johnny, Kyle, the whole team over there, they'll take good care of you. They have an award-winning service department, expert installation, extended warranties, and at Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they treat you like family. You're more than just a credit card swipe to all the team over there. Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they're proud to offer Speed Queen, the only washer and dryers with manufacturer's warranties that cover parts and labor. You owe it to yourself, if you're looking for a new appliance, to head over to Pickens to Discounted Appliance Warehouse online at dawpickens.com, dawpickens.com. A lot of text messages today. I'll try to get to as many as I can here to kind of get you updated. One, though, that really stuck out. Texter says, anger towards FEMA explained. Simply put, I'm in Western North Carolina. The Biden administration told us for almost 2 weeks, quote, FEMA is there. We are here for you. We have sent help. But we saw no one except our neighbors, our churches, our fellow Americans, and local emergency workers. We still have people being reached by mules and horses. While no one should threaten a FEMA worker, these are desperate people in a desperate situation that are tired of being lied to. The White House should take responsibility for their lack of action, and the news should tell the truth of the numbers we have lost. God bless you. And look, I get it. We are praying for you, and this is just another example of why you need to help our Salvation Army promotion and help rebuild the Carolinas. Go to rebuildcarolinas.org, rebuildcarolinas.org, and you can also go to 989word.com and get additional information there. And text me or email me, joe@joeyhudson.com. I'll send you the link because we got to help people like this. Tony says, Joey, why are you and Fox the only place we hear about job loss and businesses either filing bankruptcy or closing? If this doesn't prove biased media, nothing will. Well, Tony, that's why you come to us for just the truth. Phil writes, in reference to Governor Tim Walz's failed attempt at appearing to hunt, he says, in my best Elmer Fudd voice, be very, very quiet. I'm hunting FEMA. We can't say that. You'll get arrested. Fred says, good morning. Glad things are getting back to normal here in the upstate. Two things. First, I agree with your friend regarding 7-Eleven coffee. Been drinking it since I was 17 and try to stop whenever I see a clean store. There's a new 7-Eleven between Clemson and Seneca. The first thing I notice about it is how much more they have focused on prepared food. Very nice new store. Coffee is as good as ever. Fred's talking about, I mentioned yesterday that 7-Eleven is closing about 440 stores across the country. I have a dear friend who loves their coffee, and he'll drive across town to get 7-Eleven coffee. It's just another indicator of an iconic company like 7-Eleven struggling during this Biden-Harris economy. Fred says, second, I have zero faith in Bret Baier. He reported Biden's election within moments of the polls closing in the eastern United States in 2020. This most likely resulted in many people in the other time zones from voting. He is a closet deep stater, in my opinion. Have a great day. It's going to be interesting to see how Mr. Baier questions Kamala Harris. And look, if you listened a little earlier when I was talking about Charlamagne the God, really kind of zeroing in on Kamala Harris, maybe Bret Baier needs to take a few questions from Charlamagne the God and a few pointers on how Charlamagne the God wasn't afraid to try to push back. We'll see. Look, Bret Baier, his reputation is at stake. Fox News, they're smart broadcasters. They haven't been the number one network for many, many years for a reason. And Bret Baier, I think probably the suits have told Bret Baier, you've got to be fair. You've got to ask the question. You got to get answers. Ace writes, good morning, Joey. Just a quick thought about your topic yesterday. Being on a fixed income with Medicare, I definitely find it harder to keep my head above water. My money doesn't go far in this economy. After paying all the bills, I barely have enough for food. I'm very thrifty, but even the cheaper brands aren't cheap. Come on, America. Make the right decision this November. And Ace, we have to help people like you, people who are on a fixed income. It's our obligation to run Kamala Harris and Joe Biden out of Washington and get somebody back in there who recognizes that America's hurting, that Americans are hurting, and do the right thing. Mr. Thomas in Morganton, North Carolina, you've become a regular texter. Thank you. Appreciate that. All texters are welcome. Emails as well, joey@joeyhudson.com. I read them all. I respond to some, not always. I'm not sure you always want a response, do you? But I do appreciate them. Mr. Thomas in Morganton says, I know it would not happen, but I'd like to see Peter Ducey interview Harris. Well, boy, wouldn't we? I'd buy tickets to see that, wouldn't you? Kamala Harris is not going to come within the same state of Peter Ducey. She would never agree to that. But boy, wouldn't it be fun to watch? He says, I would also like to say I enjoy listening to you every day, Joey. Keep up the good work, and I love it when you say God's got this. One more thing before I go. Everyone should listen to Tucker Carlson's interview on October 11th with Harmeet Dillon. Well, thank you for your kind words in Morganton. I know you guys probably had some effects of the storm. Appreciate you listening. Appreciate your kind words there. And yes, I always end my radio show, my podcast, anything I do with God's got this. He's still in control, because he does. He does. And I honestly, I believe that with all of my heart. Quickly back on this story that I was talking about a minute ago about the gangs, the illegal gangs, from the New York Post. And this is what I was talking about. Some of these gang members are so young, They can't even hold them, but yet they're out robbing people. A 15-year-old Venezuelan migrant believed to be part of a violent crew of young gang members terrorizing the city of New York has been busted at least 10 times this year. Each time, he's been let back out on the street to do it again. Even the Hill, which is sort of middle of the road, sometimes more left-leaning, called him out on this. The Hill reporting that because of their age, no one's able to control these young gangs.
Members of the Tren de Aragua migrant gang are pulling off armed robberies in Times Square. The gang members are staying at a city-funded Manhattan shelter. Per the New York Post, nearly 24 young migrants, some as young as 11 years old, part of a group that are committing brazen purse snatches and gunpoint heists, targeting locals and also tourists. They're often seen flaunting their weapons on social media. Now, a Detective Bureau assistant chief told the Post that these migrants have managed to evade jail because of their ages and the state's lenient criminal justice laws. The Post says the crew has about 21 members and has been busted for about 50 separate incidents with no one behind bars yet.
And we don't have a problem? This 15-year-old that was cited in the New York Post column, he's from Venezuela, believed to be part of this violent crew of young gang members terrorizing the city. He's been busted 10 times. He's part of the Los Diablos de la 42, Spanish for Little Devils of 42nd Street. And boy, are they little devils. A crew of about 20 young migrants. And now, they know all about these kids. On May 28th, he was allegedly among 3 young criminals who surrounded 2 step hangers on a 7 train in Queens and attacked them with brass knuckles and fists, according to sources. Almost beat them to death. They robbed him. Then less than 2 weeks later, June 2nd, because he was released, he was busted again for first-degree robbery for robbing 3 people at night point on Roosevelt Avenue in Queens. Then on July the 8th, because he was turned loose again, he allegedly snatched someone's phone inside Central Park and was hit with a second-degree robbery rap. Later that month, July 20th, he was busted in 2 incidents. Again, he was stealing phones at this time, and the list goes on. This kid is arrested and released, only to go back out and continue to hurt New Yorkers. Folks, he should be sent back to where he came from. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined our mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Just click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, find me on YouTube. Be sure and like, subscribe, follow me on my YouTube channel. Just search for Joey Hudson. Appreciate you spending a few minutes of your day with me. Be sure and forward this edition of Just the Truth to some friends. Just click on the share button. Send it to a few of your contacts, because if we're going to build our community and if we're going to win in November, we got to build an army of conservatives. The way we beat Joe Biden is through educating people, and no better way than encouraging them to listen to Just the Truth. Hey, keep those comments coming via the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Your emails always welcome as well. Joey@joeyhudson.com. Don't forget to take advantage of the MyPillow special, $25 for the My Towels 6-piece towel set when you use promo code Joey. Just go to mypillow.com. Always use promo code Joey. We're back again tomorrow. Hope you will be too. Remember, God's got this. He's still in control.